Have you ever visited a tourist spot that people say is haunted, but you just brushed it off thinking, it's probably just a myth? Be careful. Sometimes what you think is just a story might turn out to be real. And by the time you realize it, it's already too late. This is a true story from a fieldwork experience, one that still keeps me up at night. Disclaimer. This story is inspired by urban legend horror stories from Indonesia. All names, locations, and events are fictional and intended for entertainment purposes only. My name is Undine, I'm 24 years old, and I work at a local TV station in Semarang as part of the production team. I never thought that a regular reporting assignment from the office would turn into the most terrifying experience of my life. At that time, our producer asked me and the team to find an urban legend story from the surrounding area, something we could turn into a horror documentary for the Friday night program. Being a Semarang native, one name instantly came to mind: Kreo Cave. Kreo Cave is technically a tourist attraction. A lot of people come there to enjoy the scenery, the hanging bridge, and the wild monkeys roaming around. But behind its beauty, the locals hold on to a story that's far from pleasant. They say that long ago, when someone meditated there, a supernatural pact was made between an ancestor and the spirit that dwells in the cave. The pact is old, passed down through generations, but its contents have never been clearly explained. One thing is certain, though, there are rules that must be respected. You must not take anything from that place, not even a single stone. And most importantly, never turn around if you hear the sound of crying coming from inside the cave. They say if you dare, you'll be marked. When my team and I came to scout the location a few days before the shoot, we met an old man selling instant coffee and cigarettes near the parking area. He looked ordinary, but his gaze was sharp, like someone who knew more than he was letting on. He noticed our camera equipment and immediately said, "If you're going to film, don't take anything from that place, and don't act brave. If you hear a woman crying from inside the cave, don't even think about turning around." I just smiled at the time. In my head, I thought, of course, every tourist site in Indonesia has stories like that. But honestly, after he said that, goosebumps crept up my arms. The air around us suddenly felt different, cold, still. And strangely, even though it was broad daylight, near the cave entrance, the natural sounds seemed to fade, like a mystical blanket had muffled everything. The day of the shoot finally came. There were 5 of us: me, the cameraman, the sound guy, the host, and the driver. At first, everything went smoothly, but the moment we parked the car and started unpacking our gear, our host, his name was Raka, suddenly went pale and weak. He complained of a pounding headache, nausea, and his body was ice cold, like someone hit with a severe fever. His face turned white as a ghost, like he had just seen something terrifying. At first, we thought he was just dehydrated or had a bad cold, but the symptoms got weirder. Cold sweat was dripping from his temple and his hands were shaking badly. We decided to let him rest in the car. Since we were running short on time, I told the team to continue without him. We could always add his narration later through voiceover. The cameraman and I started shooting from outside the cave. The cave was pitch black, like a gaping mouth carved into the rock face. The air flowing from inside was damp, cold, and oddly smelled of wet earth mixed with something metallic. We slowly stepped in while filming the surroundings. Just a few steps in, our sound guy, Gally, suddenly stopped. He said, "Did you hear that? Someone's crying." I froze. The cameraman stopped too. At first, we thought it was just the wind or some animal, but gradually we could all hear it. A woman's voice, crying, soft and deep, like it was coming from the far end of a long tunnel deep inside. But the crying, it started to change. First it sounded sad, then it morphed into something like giggling, a quiet, creepy chuckle, then back to crying again. The tone went up and down unnaturally, sending chills down our spines. I immediately told everyone to get out, but the moment we turned around, all the lights went out, completely. The camera, the flashlights, even our phones stopped working. No signal, no screen, just black. Inside that cramped cave, we stood in total darkness, calling each other's names. The atmosphere turned suffocating. Our breathing was loud and panicked. I could feel my heart pounding in my ears. And when I tried to turn on my phone one more time, I saw a faint red glow deep inside the cave, at the end of that dark tunnel. Instinctively, I turned to look, and I saw her. A woman stood inside the cave wearing a deep red kabaya. Her hair was extremely long, covering most of her face. She wasn't walking, she was floating. She didn't touch the ground. Beneath her was a pool of dark liquid, like blood, slowly dripping onto the rocks. Her hands were long and trembling, waving slowly at our direction. Her face was hidden, but through her hair, I could see a faint red glow in her eyes. It didn't feel like seeing a regular ghost. It felt like seeing something that humans were never meant to witness. I screamed and ran, and the others followed. We bolted out of the cave as fast as we could. The moment we reached the outside, phone signal returned, the camera turned back on, and the flashlights worked again. But when we checked on each other, Gali was gone. Missing. We panicked and immediately ran back in to find him, but he was nowhere to be seen. We called his name over and over, searched in circles, even asked the locals for help. But Gali never came out. One of the locals who joined the search, the old man from the coffee stall, just sighed and said softly, "If he saw the red one, that means he's already been marked." A week later, Gali was found, not in the cave, but on the edge of a small river, more than 5 kilometers away from Goa Kreo. He was weak, filthy, like someone who'd been lost in the woods for days. What was more worse is that he kept repeating one sentence over and over again. "I told you not to take the stone. I told you not to take the stone." We were all shocked, because that's when we realized Gali had picked up a small stone from inside the cave the first time we went in. Just for fun, he said, as a souvenir. But he hadn't told anyone. And what still gives me chills to this day is when we reviewed the audio recording from the camera, during the part where the crying was heard, there was a whisper, a woman's whisper. Very faint, but clear if you listen with headphones. The voice said, "Thank you for coming." And since then, I've never set foot near Kreo Cave again, not even to pass by. Sometimes at night when I hear soft crying outside my apartment window, I just cover my ears. Because one thing I learned from that night, if you ever hear crying coming from the darkness, never turn around.